funny friends, my funny friends, my funky friends now. My funny friends, my funny friends, my funky friends now.
Starring Drew Harrison and Will Abeles.
Welcome back to another episode of My Funny Friends. I am one half of your hosting duo here, Drew Harrison, joined by my lovely co-host, Mr. Will Abeles. Will, how you doing, buddy? Look, you got sunlight in your face. You're well.
I know. I got this
Look at this.
natural light going. This natural light.
Just gleaming, dude. Is it because last week was the week?
Oh, that is definitely not why. That's the bags under my eyes. That's what that is. Yeah, no.
Congratulations. You did the thing. So tell us about it.
The taping was last Thursday, and it went great. I mean, I'm excited to see the footage because when you're up there, as you know, you're just like, I have no idea if this is going well or not. And I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from everyone that was there, and anything that went wrong was not my fault. Like,
I just wanted to be known it was not my fault.
Yeah, like the opener, Renard Hirsch is one of the best comics in Nashville, right? And we're like, it's like 6:30. We're trying to start. I look at Brandon. Brandon Gerald was hosting, and I was like, you know where Renard is? And we're looking around. Renard just like went for a walk, and then we like see him coming over the hill. He just like went for a walk to 7-Eleven. I don't know what he was doing, but he came back, did a fantastic job opening the show. So you're like, I'm not even mad about this. But just like things like that. Yeah, like broken glasses. There was a couple broken glasses. So it's fun. It's going to be edited well because luckily we've done this long enough that I know how to stop and start and get back into the joke. And, you know, the bloopers will be fun too. I'm excited to like.
You going to release some bloopers on YouTube as well? Like the weird cuts?
I'll have little, just like I spilled some water. Brandon Gerald's grandmother's phone went off. Like, just a little thing.
Jitterbug started buzzing.
Like, just very quietly, like it went off, and then it started blinking, and I was like, you couldn't. It was like the first joke. It was like 2 minutes in. So if it was gonna happen, at least it was then.
Like everyone out, and we're gonna bring you back in. We're starting over.
I literally kept saying that. I was like, all right, start over. Like, Renard, get back up here. Start the whole thing over.
Well, good. Good. I'm glad you feel good about it. Overall, good.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it all comes together. Everyone's getting paid this week.
Right,
so that'll be nice.
Look at that.
Everyone but you. You're not getting paid yet.
That's fair. I haven't done my part yet, so it makes sense.
Yeah, you get paid later.
I get paid after the finished product, because I will be editing it. So if you have anything you need edited, holler at your boy.
Yeah, everyone. Best editor in Nashville. If not the entire South, if not the world. Yeah.
Not that good. Apparently
Pretty
DaVinci
good.
Resolve is the new hotness. Like everyone I've seen is doing DaVinci Resolve. I'm like,
what is that?
It's another program. It's like the industry standard. I don't know.
Whatever.
Yeah. But no, today I thought we would talk about, since we didn't want to curse you and talk about this before the show, because thankfully, the product is done and we don't have to add this to the list. But today we talked about it before, and we're going to talk about bad shows that we have endured over the years.
We are.
Luckily, I've been on a nice little run. I've had some very good shows, knock on wood. I don't want this.
Yeah.
I don't want this podcast to conjure up some bad show demons.
Some evil.
But it is fun once you get to a point in your comedy career that you can look back and laugh, I guess, at the bad shows, because you're not in the moment anymore, because some of them can get downright weird and scary, and it can be brutal.
Violent. I mean, we could even include, we'll get to it eventually, but my first album, even my second album, if you want to talk about bad shows in a weird way.
I got a feeling the number here is gonna teeter towards you.
Oh my God. Every show's a bad show in my world, right?
The amount of bad shows that you've endured over the years. Because the good thing about the South is if it's a bad show, people usually at least try to be like courteous. Like, oh,
Well,
bless your heart. I'm sorry. Like, don't like if you piss off
unless
a
they're
southerner,
the owner,
the whole yeah. Okay, wait, we'll
unless
get to that one. We'll get to that one.
am
But
I
were they
getting red already?
southern or were they a transplant? So you never know.
They were Southern. They were Southern because they
Okay.
were mad that I was not a Southerner.
Ah, okay.
That was
Well,
part of
that's
the
fair.
fight. We'll
That
get
shows
to
it.
it. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
That's a good
Yeah,
one.
yeah. But what do you remember one of your first bad shows?
Yeah, I actually do. And it's sort of funny because it was an open mic in Boston, and it was just like I was so new that you think, yeah, right, like right, stop it there. Say less. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, it was the first time performing outside of my school. So it wasn't necessarily like it was a bad show or mic.
See,
It
that
was
blows
just
my
I had
mind that you
never
first started performing at school.
it,
Because
like
that
I
was some
went
of our bad shows is when we went to schools in Wilmington.
yeah, I could literally leave my dorm, go down to the basement, and there was a theater, like a small theater, like a black box theater, and that's where we did our
Oh,
shows. Like I didn't have to leave the building if I didn't, if it was the right one. So it was the first time performing outside of my school essentially. So, our open mics were shows, and those shows were filled with other 18 to 22-year-olds.
so your first shows, just to give some context here with the schools,
Yeah.
how many people would attend those shows?
I mean, sure, there would be some lightly attended ones, but we would fill the room with
Like, how much do you think that room held?
I know it could hold up to 100 people.
Okay,
I don't think very rarely would we have 100 people there. But I would say, I mean,
okay.
there were nights where it was like 50 people, but I think on average it's probably 20,
I
25.
mean, your
Yeah,
first few shows, you know what I mean? Like, that's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. And then there were nights where it was empty, and that's where you really learned if you were going to keep doing this or not. But yeah, my
Yeah,
first bad show was at Nick's Comedy Stop. And again, it wasn't really even that it was a bad show. It was just my first actual open mic experience.
yeah,
And I'm just bombing and I'm trying new material because at that time I thought you had to have new material every single time.
yeah.
And so I'm just like making stuff up, like making up stories. And I just remember like it ending. And I was just kind of like, well, that was new. And just like getting off stage. And I actually remember Blake Wexler was hosting a former guest, Blake Wexler. And Blake came up to me and was like, dude, that was just so funny. And I was like, what? And he was like, you're just like, you just don't know anything.
I can see
Because at
the
that,
green in your face.
right. Because at that point, Blake was like 6 years in,
Yeah,
because he
yeah.
started when he was a child.
That's yeah. Please go back and check that episode out if you haven't. Talking about dragging his mom to bars so he could do
In
comedy in Philly.
Philadelphia,
Like,
in Philly. It's so funny.
yeah, it's
But
a
yeah, go
great
check out the
episode.
Blake Wexler episode.
Yeah.
What was your first? Do you remember your first worst one?
So I think early on I had all bad shows, so I didn't really know. My first show was I got a lot of people there that knew
Hmm.
me that they just wanted to be like the quiet
I got to
kid
see
from
this.
high school is doing stand up comedy. So it was terrible, but they were supportive and appreciative. So
Yeah.
first show out, you get laughs. You're like, all
Oh
right,
God.
like I can
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
it. Like
Yeah.
looking back now, like the material was terrible, god
Oh,
awful.
you showed me early clips, and
Yeah.
it's
Oh, it's
incredible how different it is from
yeah.
today.
And what's crazy is like that's the quality of shows I was doing early on. That material
That you
was
were like
pretty
a
good.
legend.
Yeah, like that.
What?
That's the
What?
weird part. Is like I look back now and think about all the people that cheered me on and were supportive early on, and I appreciate them so much. Like, don't get me wrong, I would have quit
Sure.
if I didn't have that. But looking back, like, did you really laughed at that joke?
Yeah. 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 But also, and I mean this genuinely, that material would crush in Nashville today.
Yes. Yes.
You would walk into Twin Kegs and destroy. They
Oh,
would carry you out.
yeah. Yeah. You have to look inward and realize that that's not the comic you want to be. So I think I've come a long way for the better. So it worked out. But early on, man, like the first time I ever said words
Mhm.
into a microphone that wasn't that first time in front of all of my family and friends was in front of one booker where you had to audition for the open mic. You had to do. He gave you a minute on a live mic in the main showroom, and he's just in the back with his arms crossed, staring at you.
Perfect.
So like I go from a warehouse, like a brewery full of my friends that are laughing just to be
Your
nice,
loved ones,
to this guy being like, and he told me early, and it's my fault too, because he said, "Now don't go talking about something stupid like poop jokes." And I went up there and I blanked on all of the material I'd done, and I'd just written a poop joke.
No way.
So I told a poop joke. So he yells at me to get off stage. My buddy's there with me. He gets into it with him. I end up getting banned from Good Nights. So I think
I love that you got banned from Good Nights.
Second time talking into a microphone, I get banned from what I think is, and I mean rightfully so, the comedy club in North Carolina.
It is like one of the clubs of the South.
Yeah.
Like everyone knows Good Nights. Like everyone knows Good Nights. And
so it's like
your second time, and of all the stuff that I've done and the antics I've pulled off, and the fact that you are the only one between the two of us banned from a club. Now am I banned from rooms? There's maybe one. There's maybe one. There's maybe two. There's maybe five. But am I banned from a club? No.
Yeah. Like I legit thought, like I contemplated just quitting before I even got going.
Yeah.
I was like, if this is going to be comedy,
like,
I don't want.
I can't
to
do Good Nights. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And plus, I'm assuming this is the industry standard now. So I'm like, I don't want to keep doing this.
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to do.
If I have to audition for an open mic for one person, I'm gonna quit.
Like that is
like immediately.
So insane. Like auditioning for an open mic, when you really like think about that, is just
like now I think about it now and I'm like, that was ridiculous. I should have been the one that was mad in that situation.
Right. Like I'm in the middle of this email right now where there is an open mic / showcase that I'm trying to get on, and I can't get even like an email back, and I'm like, what is happening? We're talking about your open, and not because like I'm like desperate to do it, because I'm going to be in town anyway. So I was like, oh, okay, that's like a good room. I'll do that. And I can't get a response, and I'm like, how? Like this open mic better change my career.
Yeah.
Like I better come back and do a weekend, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, I just thought that's how it was, and then I luckily went down to Wilmington. My next time on stage was Wilmington, Port City's Top Comic, 2012, where I meet all the Wilmington killers and Matt White,
all of our guests,
Eric Schaus, Lou Morgante, Louis Bishop, the Steves, Milia and Marcinowski.
Would Mark Brady have been there yet?
No, Mark hadn't started yet, and okay. Yeah, and that's when I was like, oh,
this is comedy.
This can be fun. Like now I'm here for it. That's when I caught the bug, and those shows were great. Yeah. We were in a theater in Wilmington, and they were fantastic. So it was the nice, like the two extremes, though, like the absolute worst of comedy, and then I don't want to call a contest the best of comedy, but that friendship and camaraderie was the best of it.
Yeah, you made lifelong friends. Yeah,
right. And I moved to Wilmington because of it, because I was looking at Raleigh and Wilmington to move to. Bad experience in Raleigh, fantastic experience in Wilmington. Right. So then I went to Wilmington, and then that's when I got nervous.
Yeah.
Because Matt White had plucked me up and helped me, and we had some great shows at Tipsy Teapot, Greenville, North Carolina. It's where a lot of weirdly enough Mr. Beast writers have come from. So,
interesting.
Yeah. But those were great shows. But, you know, it almost made you a little delusional, you know, like they were like the student showcases. Like it was a bunch of ECU kids. Bringing
a million people.
Yeah. So then I moved to Wilmington and got scared to do the Nut Street mic because it was like like the owner's the bartender of the open mic night. So he's watching everybody. So to get my nerves under control, I went to this Tuesday open mic in Wilmington for the first like 2 months I was there, and it was at this hole in the wall bar named Locals, and it was run by my buddy Sean Webb. It's who I dedicated my first album to, that passed away from cancer. and he just first one to like really bring me in and kind of show me where to go in Wilmington. And so for the first 2 months, I was trying to work my jokes up, and I was doing them at this hole in the wall bar for maybe 2 comedians and the bartender.
Yeah.
And that was it for 2 months to try to, just get the
That's what
word
makes
out.
it good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like I know, like we'll talk about New York open mics every once in a while and how like they were so hard because everyone's just sitting down looking at their notepad, and but but the thing is, when you're doing this new bit or whatever it is, if you get one person to look up and laugh, you're
Yeah.
like that. Okay, keep going.
Put a
That's the
little
joke.
star
That's the
by
bit.
that. Yeah.
Keep working on this. Yeah, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, then we had some highs and lows in Wilmington after that with Nut Street and losing the club and and
Right.
and the transition to Dead Crow. We did some hole in the wall uh places and some weird spots and some open mic, and we had to move the open mic so much that I kind of the people that we had built up, that fan base we'd built up at Nut Street, didn't know where to go.
You couldn't.
So
Yeah,
they're
you
like,
couldn't
we
keep them.
don't know where the mic's at.
You guys were doing don't tell before don't tell.
Yeah. And it was
So
every
you didn't
Thursday.
have the email chain. Yeah.
And we finally found a temporary home at Real Cafe, and that really showed us what we could build in Wilmington,
Right. That was
because
when
we
you took
built
me
it
to
from the
lunch,
ground
right?
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We literally went from 3 people in the crowd at the open mic to packing it out on Thursdays by the time we moved into Dead Crow. And
Yeah.
then Dead Crow was just a dream world. Like that's not even an
Sure.
open mic. You're doing
Yeah.
an open mic in front of 75 to 100 people every Thursday.
Yeah.
Like, nah, that's not real.
There was an open mic. I think it was a comedy zone in Harrisburg, and that same thing. It was like
Yeah, yeah,
75 people, and I
yeah,
was just like, "Oh man, you guys are so spoiled." But
yeah,
it's
yeah.
Harrisburg.
Harrisburg is fun. That is a fun room. It's got the cool painting behind you and stuff. Like, but I've
Well, there's
seen
some
some
comics that
people.
don't love
Well, no,
it.
I've
We have
seen
a
the
mutual
videos.
friend who
I've
has
seen the videos that,
hated it.
because I saw that in them when I was there.
Yeah.
I saw that they it could get off the rails, but I was in such a weird headspace when I went there. I just had some let's say legal trouble. So I had gotten released from jail and gone straight to Harrisburg, like upon getting released from jail.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
I was in a no nonsense kind of mind space. So I think I shut down the first person a little aggressively, and I didn't have any problem the rest of the time. And you know me, that's very unlike.
It's not like you at all.
Yeah, but I was
It's like,
just
okay.
I was just like, you're not messing with me this weekend. Like,
Just really, yeah, yeah. You were a hardened criminal at that point. You were not
yeah,
messing around.
I got a rap sheet.
I'm realizing, I don't know why I said that the mic was good, but I'm realizing that was the one time I've done that one. That was the room where I walked out and I'm sitting at the bar, and like, because you have to go outside the room to sit, and
Yeah,
I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about going back in, and that's when I see this woman being dragged out for screaming at a comic, and not the comic on stage, but another comic is now on stage. Sorry, the comic, she was yelling at a comic. That comic got off stage. He couldn't handle it. The next comic gets on stage. He's screaming at the woman. She's screaming racial slurs back, and he yells out, "Bitch, I have a gun in my car. I'm gonna take you outside and shoot you." And then like two bouncers drag her out. She's kicking and screaming, and I'm sitting there like, "Well, I am getting out of Harrisburg. I'm good." So that was that mic. So
so, okay. So you didn't perform? You just were like,
no, I
nope.
did. I did phenomenal. I mean,
Okay.
just so well that I'm a regular. No, I did go on stage, and it was actually mic up until that very violent
I
moment.
got you. Isn't that crazy how that can turn, man? We used to have this place in Wilmington that could be a fun show, but most of the time was not.
Yeah.
And it was a bar setting, and that's when the closest I ever saw, like personally, live, a comedian almost getting hit.
Wow.
Like a person running up to the stage and like winding back, and luckily the comic just didn't show any fear and was like, if you're gonna hit me, man. And he called his bluff, and the dude didn't hit him. So, but it's just one of those things. Like, I still was like
Yeah.
7-8 months in, looking at this, like, what am I doing?
And isn't that, yeah, like I remember a kid in college. having a meltdown on stage and like quitting on stage like mid-show. And like it's like one of those things where I guess the competitiveness in me was like, that's one less.
Yeah.
Not
I
like,
didn't
oh,
feel
warning
bad at
sign,
all.
take care of yourself,
No,
stay
like
healthy.
another one bites the dust.
Right, right. Like just like, well, that's one more person out of my way. You know what I mean? Like no way I take that as like a yeah, in like
Didn't
12
say,
years this could be
didn't show
you.
you were getting jaded at all, huh?
No, not like
The
yeah. Like
signs
I
weren't
was
there at all.
yeah, I was jaded a year in. I was already just like sitting in the back, just shaking my head at everybody.
No, I hear that. Yeah, this guy in Asheville, North Carolina. It was still at this place called the Southern. I think it was a Disclaimer Bar and Lounge in the back of the Southern. And he apparently had been an open micer and just wasn't gaining any ground. This is what the host told me. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he was just known for trying crazy things and doing weird stuff and just being mad when he didn't get a response. And he goes up there and he's just like, you know what? This is the last time you'll ever see me. I'm done. I hate you all. I quit. And I was just like,
Amazing. That's like, but that's how I almost finish every set now.
so
uh,
what comes to mind when you think of absolute worst show
well, that's what I
you've
was
ever
just
done?
thinking about because really, like, I know I mentioned Nick's, but that wasn't a bad show. That was just my first open mic. Honestly, I was pretty spoiled the first couple years because I went straight from doing shows at Emerson to the Comedy Studio, which was always packed out, and you had to get good quick because it was the best club in Boston. And so I mean, my audition for the studio, I was wedged between Colin Yost and Pete Holmes. Very nice. I've heard he's the
I didn't
nicest
know
in town.
Colin Jost was a Boston guy.
I didn't know he was either, but he was there that night, and this was back when
Okay, so he
he
might
was a
not have been.
writer.
I got
Yeah, but he was. It was like him. It was Pete Holmes, and there was one other. I don't think that was the night Rory Scovel was on it, but like anyway, that was the thing. It's like those are the guys that were just popping in. It was almost like LA kind of in a way. But that night was packed out every single time. You would also do Dick Doherty's, which was always packed out. So like I was always doing these packed out
you.
shows.
Wait, what?
This place called Dick Doherty's.
Dick Darty's?
Yeah, I think it was called like the Cellar or something like that. Not the Cellar, it was the Vault. The Vault.
Okay.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I'd
But
give it a nickname too if it was called Dick Daughtry's.
no, his name is no, not Dick Daughters. It's Dick
Dick
Doherty.
Daughtry.
Doherty's.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, okay.
You're just not hearing it in the accent.
Dick Doherty's.
Dick Daughtry.
Dick
No,
Doherty's.
I didn't. I don't ever realize I have an accent until I go places that aren't in the South. So it came out in Indy last night, I guess.
Oh, really? That's funny. Like, no. Yeah. I don't know. There's little words you say that I pick up on it, but I don't really
Yeah,
hear it too much. But
yeah.
that's also because I think everyone around me sounds like you.
I'm
Um,
I'm in the middle of where Southerners don't appreciate my accent, and other people think I'm the most Southern person they've ever met.
I'm like, oh my God, is he
I'm
even
just like,
speaking
what?
English? But I was very spoiled in Boston. So I think it wasn't until I moved to New York. Oh, I know what my first bad show was. It was so I moved to New York, was doing the open mics, was doing shows, but my worst show was actually in my hometown of Hagerstown, Maryland. And the first time I did it, it was 500 people. Still to this day, one of the best shows of all time. The
Wow, that
second
was the
time I
first
did
time
it,
you didn't.
yeah, and I was like really new. I mean, I had just gotten to New York, so like 500 people that was the first time I think I was in front of
Yeah,
more than
that'd
50.
be yeah,
But the
big jump.
second time I did it, they had me back to do New Year's Eve,
Ooh, never a good time.
and
Never. That's gonna be on my list as New Year's Eve shows.
hmm and I was supposed to open the show, and they moved me to feature, which I thought was cool. But now I'm supposed to do 20 minutes, and it is like 11:40. So no one wants me talking,
Right.
and the headliner has to go after me, right? And I made it
Does the
7 minutes
headliner
in.
go up at midnight?
He still went up, and I did 7 minutes before I just walked off stage. I had 7 minutes, and I finally went. You know what? I said out loud because like there was a couple people paying attention, but for the most part, no one's listening. No one gives a shit.
Yeah.
I also said a joke that my dad was in the audience, and I said a joke that he was like, "Oh, that went right over their head." Like it was just not my crowd. Like across the
Yeah.
board, not my crowd.
Yeah.
I did 7 minutes and I stopped and just went, you know what? This really isn't worth my time. And I don't think it's worth your time either. So happy New Year, and I hope you all have a wonderful New Year, something like that. And then I just get off, and the booker was like, "You can't just like cut time like that." And I was like, "I'm not being paid." And it's so funny because this is how I sound now. But but even then, I was like,
Early
I was
on.
like, I was like, why? I'm not being paid, and they're not listening. And it was like, I'm not. They really, and they were fine. They were like, they weren't good for the headliner either. Like the headliner got up and berated them, was like, "That's a new comic. You guys should be nicer." And even that, I'm like, they don't care. Like it's
I
New
don't
Year's
give a
Eve. We shouldn't have
shit.
been doing the show at 11
Right,
o'clock.
right, right,
We should
right.
have been doing it at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
It was
We would
crazy.
do a
But yeah, that
show
was the
in
first bad one.
Wilmington that was always terrible. I only had to do it one time, but I was in the audience for a couple more of them. And we would do the usual New Year's Eve shows at Dead Crow. And
Mhm.
then we would go to City Stage and do a midnight show that was just god awful every time. And City Stage, the bars outside on the balcony in one of the best views in Wilmington. And people had to keep going outside to go to the bar. And once they get to the bar, they're like, I'm just gonna
I'm not
stay
coming
out
back in
here.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
this
yeah.
is great. Like I got booze right here, views right here. No one's
At
talking. This is great. Great.
at at least you guys weren't like that kind of like insanity. That's like, let's do it outside.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the people that did come back in wanted to talk about how great outside was
Yeah,
loudly inside while we were trying. So it was one of those things where we're like, eventually, I think Timmy was like, we're not doing that
I
anymore. I
think
think
we're
we did
good
it
on
like
this
3 or 4
one.
years. So he was just like, no, no,
That is funny when there's certain shows that just kind of disappear because
they need
collectively
to.
between like yeah, like between like the guys running it and or the girls running it or whoever's running it and the like even the scene in general is kind of just like yeah, it's okay.
Yeah,
like
it
like this
can go.
really isn't
Just let it
doing
go.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's funny that you can have different levels of bad shows. Like you can have the bad show because the environmental
Hmm.
variables are off, or you can have a bad show where the crowd's there for you and you just have a bad show.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of those moments? Like unfortunately the only time my mom has seen me live was one of those moments. Cuz
Oh,
I got told I did this contest. I was like 6 months in and I was told 30 minutes before the show it was a clean show. And while I'm pretty
very
clean
clean now.
now, not so much when I first started.
Wow.
So instead of cleaning up my already set material, I was like, well, time to do 10 minutes of new jokes. And my mom came and it was just the audience was there. It was a packed house. It's the first time I met Caleb Elliott. Caleb Elliott was in the
Oh,
contest
funny.
and did
So he was like
phenomenal.
7 then?
He was I think he was like 11.
So funny.
I think he was very young and 15. He might have been 15. He started at 11. I think he was 15 when I met him. And I said I never say this on stage, but I said this about 37 times. Was you know what I mean? Like I would say
Oh,
a
wow.
joke, it wouldn't land. They'd look at me and be like, you know what I mean? Like,
Wow.
please, do you know what I mean?
Can you give me anything here? Yeah.
And so for the longest time, my mom just did not see this as a viable thing for me to do at all because I mean that's what she she
That's what
held
she
the,
saw. That
the
was her
goal.
whole her
Yeah, she's
she
like,
judged
oh man,
everything just on that.
my son sucks at this.
I mean, those happen so often where you're just doing it like breweries are so interesting because you would think breweries and comedy would be a great combination. And most of the times they are. But when they're not,
See,
because it's like high ceilings, it's
see, I went
like
against it. See, I thought it was a terrible idea when we first started moving comedy to breweries. I was like, no. I was
yeah,
like, you don't have kids running around, you have dogs
right, right,
barking.
right.
This room's not set up for it. No one cares. And so I was surprised how well it worked, to be honest with
Well, I feel like when it's ticketed, that's usually like the thing that usually does it. Like there's a ton of good brewery shows, like
you.
obviously,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there are those nights where, like, let's say you're outside or it's just like half the room didn't know it was comedy night, so they're just like
I love a good old surprise. It's comedy.
Yeah, those are really the worst. Is when it's like there's no one knows it's supposed to be happening,
Yeah.
and they don't want to get on board with it either. You know, they're like, no, I'm not even gonna look at you. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like those are because I'm trying to like think of like a specific one, but they just kind of blend together. Where you're like, yeah, sometimes you just get there and it's just not the night. You know,
Yeah.
and then like the room's full and it's just not happening. You know, or like I mean, I did a oh god, this was actually kind of a great one. I got booked at Wisecrackers at State College, PA, and I had Friday, 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday. I think it was two. I was hosting, so it was 2 shows Friday. Um, sorry, and then the Saturday show we had a one at the. How did they set this up? I think it was 2 shows Friday and then 3 shows Saturday. And during the second show, I had to drive the feature up to a Moose Lodge in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. So like only 40 minutes away, and everything at State College, some of the best shows I've ever had in my entire life. I get to Lock Haven and I walk in, packed, 200 people. There is wrestling on the back.
So does
On
the
like,
feature become the headliner now, or does the headliner then drive
it's
up
just
and meet you?
the headliner goes up to meet us at the end.
That's
The
insane, dude.
Yeah, but these guys were like road dogs, like
Yeah.
30, 40 years in road dogs.
Yeah.
So
They're
like
like, all
hanging
right,
out with
on
them
to the
that
next one.
yeah, like hanging out with them that weekend was so much fun because they were just like comedy purists in a way. You know, it's like they're not selling out a room because they went viral on TikTok for like crowd work. You know,
Yeah.
like these guys went up there with like a list and they had an hour to fill and they had 60 jokes. You know, like that kind of stuff. And it was just so crazy to watch them because it was so good too. But anyway,
How do you
so
remember 60 jokes?
well, yeah, that's why I had the piece of paper.
Oh, okay.
But so we go up to Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. Walk in. There's wrestling playing on the TV in the back, and not like WWE, like Penn State wrestling is playing. And I was like, this is going to be rough. Everyone there's wearing flannel, and I'm wearing flannel, but not for the same reasons. And there's a DJ, and he goes, "Oh, you guys are the comics, right?" And we're like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, you guys ready to start?" We're like, "Yeah." I think he's gonna give me an intro, anything. He just goes, "All right, now we're doing comedy." That's the intro. So I walk up as cold as you could possibly be. First 2 jokes bomb. Then I said, well, I'm happy to be back in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. I'm happy to be in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. And that's the first time I've ever said that. And a guy in the back yells out, "You're a poser," which was the funniest thing my whole set. And there was some younger people in the crowd that were with me the whole time, but like 185 of them were just like, "We don't want this kid." Yeah. So
did the feature and headliner do all right?
murdered. The feature got up. The feature was yeah, murdered. The feature was like in his 70s. Like he was an old guy.
Jeez.
Yeah, but he got up,
You in your 70s,
ripped
you
into
ain't
them.
headlining yet?
I know, seriously. I think he does headline, but I think
I
that
know,
is
I'm
me.
just messing with you.
But he gets up, rips into the audience for being like not being nice to me, and but like making fun of them so much, like just making fun of them, being like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be scared of you. Think you're gonna have a gun?" He's
Oh,
like,
he's
"Of
a
course you have a gun."
spicy 70-year-old, huh? All
Just
right.
goes in on them, and they are loving it, kills. And I remember the booker was like, and I have not had a bad set until this moment, right? Like
Yeah.
4 shows,
You can
murders the host.
feel, yeah.
Someone went up to the booker and said, "I've come to." He's like, "You know, I come every week. He's the funniest guy I've ever seen." So this is like where I'm at. Bomb that fifth one, and then the booker's like, "Yeah, man, like you really got to give it to him. If they're not giving it, like, well, never book me again." And I was like, "Well, this is
One
kind of
out of
on
five,
you
huh?
for not giving me any heads up that I'm walking into a freaking lumberjack convention." Like, God. Well, that was a real high and low because you went from crushing to
And I hate when it's that way. You know, I
yeah.
hate when it's the good show and then the bad show. Because
Mhm.
if you can end on that high mark, it doesn't even matter if you had 5 bad shows. You ended on
Right.
that good show.
It's like going to the open mic after the show where you're like, why are we doing
But
this to
yeah,
ourselves?
I've learned a long time ago, don't ever do that unless you just don't care. Like, unless you already feel good about the night and you have you
and
don't
you're just
care
like, I just want to go
what
hang.
happens.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
But that's how it was. The first time I was at the Greensboro Comedy Zone in North Carolina, I opened for Greg Morton, who has since gone on to do America's Got Talent, and he's got his face on the side of the comedy club in Arkansas. Like, dude's doing pretty well for himself. So I'm opening for him, and he's got a crazy act. Like, dude does wardrobe changes, songs.
He's
Like,
doing wardrobe changes.
He's the definition of like an entertainer.
Yeah.
The first show I did Friday, I stumbled, like I fell up the stairs, and they didn't let me get over that. They never let me overcome that. Second show that night, I'm feeling bad about the first show, so I just
You're just not in it. Yeah.
Did myself in. First show Saturday was the worst crowd we had. Like, even Greg struggled with them. And so finally, that last show, it was just it clicked. My set went great. The crowd was great, and it was so wonderful. And and I had been doing it for a little while at that point. Like, I wasn't. I was probably like 10 years in. And Greg came to me, and it just catches you off guard. He just came to me. He's like, "I knew you could do it." Thanks, man.
Good job, buddy.
Yay. So so it was just it made all those 3 other shows not even matter, because I ended on that high note. The guy was happy because that was fresh, and the
that's
owner
the one he
was
remembers.
happy because it was fresh in his mind. So it works out.
Yeah, I had the opposite of that in Richmond, where it was the first one on Thursday night was great, and then the rest of them were just awful.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, and it was like one of these weird weekends where you got paid well, the club was great, the rooms were great, they put you up in.
Yeah.
And just whoever showed up that weekend was like they bought tickets to go be spiteful.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm gonna go to this comedy club and not laugh.
Yeah, just stare at them the whole time.
Yeah, just be awful.
Man, probably one of the worst shows I ever did was outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, this small town, and it was at a biker bar.
It is the South.
Yeah.
It is always in the South, isn't it?
Well, it's just because I've been in the South. Like, I'll tell you about a terrible show I did in New York after this.
I know exactly. Yeah, I know. And, I know exactly where you are. You don't have to tell me the story, and I know where you are.
And it was a biker bar, but the biker group was the local fire department. So the chief is the president of the biker gang.
This would be the funniest episode of what's the biker show?
Sons of Anarchy.
Sons of Anarchy.
We're joining the fire department, boys.
What are they just fighting?
And the fire department was right next door, so it's fire department bar. Like, I was like, do y'all just all just hang out? Like, you clock in and you stay here all day? Like, they didn't want to be picked on. They didn't want to be talked about. Like, and he came up laughing at us after, but it was one of those scary laughs where you're like, let's get the fuck out of here. Yeah. During my buddy Matt Milner's set, him and the chief and like he had a pretty good funny. He's like, so because you're the chief, you became the president, or because you're the president, you became the chief? Like, shouldn't we have some disparity here? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And separation of church and state.
And he pulls out this knife and like hits it on the table. And so Matt, without missing a beat, pulls his knife out and like does like a little. It was just it, and he came up to me. He's like, "Y'all were funny," and we were like,
"Thanks."
But midway through the show,
Matt, keep the knife out. Yeah,
yeah. Matt did 20. My buddy Cordero did 20, and then I did 20 to finish it. And during Cordero's set, this guy came up to us, me and Matt, in the back of the room, because this is how loud it still was in that whole bar. Like, no one gave us the time of day. He came up to us. He's like, "So I heard y'all are doing a comedy show tonight. When's that start?" And we were like, halfway through.
yeah. Which is always a good sign. Yeah, and it's like, it's funny because now that we're talking about it, what I would consider my worst show ever, at least in my mind, you're like, actually, there's been worse shows. Like I've been a part of worse
I mean, don't get,
shows.
yeah, I've been a part of worse shows. That's just one that sticks out of my mind because
Yeah,
of the level of what that was
yeah,
just attached to it. You know, like this was those people's lives. You know, like you felt like you were walking in on like their reality show almost. We had a tip bucket and we got $0 in the tip bucket.
you got $0 from the firemen bikers,
Yeah.
the fire bikers.
Yeah. Who had
That's
pretty much given up by the time I went on stage.
got it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Which
that's
was
so
nice
funny.
because some of them went outside to like smoke and do whatever, and I got to do a show for like the bar staff.
Yeah, and they
I
were
got
like,
the
"We're into
better
this."
end of the deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's funny because like there's certain rooms like that some of those guys just love to give you money.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
that was
like
not
on a
one.
different night, that could have been one of them where you walk away with like I didn't know it was going to be $400 tonight. You know?
Yeah. I do love those nights where you're like, "This is terrible," and then you sell the most merch you've ever sold. You're like, "What?"
Yeah, we did. Actually this is a good show. But Donnie Sengstack and I went down to what was it called? The Kent Island Yacht Club, which I believe his
Ooh,
uncle was a
fancy.
member of. Yeah. And we stayed in a houseboat, which was sort of foreshadowing for what would happen to me. Like, actually, I think that was around the time I was staying on a houseboat. So I was just like a houseboat guy. Story for another day.
I can't do
But,
the movement.
oh, that kept me asleep. That was the best part until there was a storm. That was like, that
Yeah.
night was anyway. But, like, so what I figured out later is I think Donnie was guaranteed a certain amount of money, which he was going to keep for himself, and the other comics were all going to work on a tip bucket. There was a miscommunication with the venue, so instead of giving Donnie that money, they paid each of us individually. But then the tip bucket was so good, we all walked away with like just a ton of cash. So it was just like it was a yacht club, and we all did well, and like no one was like. But even it was funny because it was not really my crowd, but I still could do some political jokes and stuff, and they were just like, "Oh, this guy," you know.
Yeah.
We made a ton of money, so it was
I,
that was a good one.
I had a show like that. We did a show in my hometown. The first time I took comics from Wilmington back to my hometown of Southern Pines and did a show. It was at this place called Broad Street Bar and Grill. No longer open. And it's me and 4 comics, and we had agreed upon a certain amount of money, which was already pretty good. And then on top of that, the owner, which was a pretty good friend of mine during my 20s, the drinking days,
Mm-hmm.
he got a little hammered himself, and it was a mediocre show at best,
Yeah,
you know and he threw another $100 bill on top of what he agreed to pay us, like just one of
nice.
those nights where he's like, y'all did great, and we were like, did we? And we had a free bar tab, so we had a ridiculous, we ran up a ridiculous bar tab, got paid extra money. You couldn't tell us nothing that night, and we just had the most mediocre show you had ever seen. When we were putting up the band, we had like a Port City comedy banner behind us,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't realize it, but we hung it on top of the colors of a local biker gang, and they came walking in and were like looking at us, and we were like,
What is with you and bikers?
I don't know. But I went up to him and I was like, well, let's not make this a thing, please. And I was like, hey man, is it cool if we just put that up for the show? We'll take it down as soon as we're done. And of course, like it wasn't like most bikers are very nice. And they were like, yeah, dude, sure, whatever you need to do. So
Yeah,
it one of those things where we were like, oh, and then they're like,
yeah.
we don't care.
Yeah, we don't care at all.
We know you're not
What
a
else?
rival biker gang coming in here to disrespect us
Who
on
are the Port
purpose.
City
It's
comedy?
okay.
Who are those guys? Yeah, we're their
Yeah.
patches.
Yeah.
I always like when you're trying to like negotiate with a place that like maybe does music but doesn't do comedy or whatever it is, or like you're just trying to negotiate with like a brewery or whatever it is. And I love the little rules that they'll drop on you because you can tell someone messed up before.
Yeah.
Right? Like I did a show at a saloon in Marfa, Texas, and
What were
they
you
were
doing
like
in Martha, Texas?
Marfa, Texas.
I know.
Um, I
Again, the
was
accent.
I was traveling across the country, and I always wanted to go to Marfa. Booked a show and did a
Hold on.
show.
So
And
you knew about Martha, Texas, and you're like, I want to go here.
well, yeah, Marfa's like a pretty famous place outside of you. Uh,
What?
yeah,
What's
it's
there?
like an
What's it famous for?
there's this Prada store. It's oh my God, it's so stupid.
So you're assuming I would know about a famous Prada store
Well, it's
in
a art
Texas.
installation, so it's not. It's like a mini version. It's a mini replica of a Prada store built like 50 miles outside the town, or like 20 miles outside the town. And whoever the artist that did it is like famous for this, and a bunch of artists flock there. So the town is like a third artists, a third locals who are like honest, like real cowboys, and then apparently there's like 16 government agencies that all live within like a mile or 10 miles of whatever it is.
What?
So the rest are all like ICE agents. So it was a wild crowd. Um,
What? How do they
yeah,
coexist?
very carefully, I guess. Well, and it's like a mile from the border too. Like where I stayed was across from a detainment center. Like it was like literally across the street was a detainment center, and then like on the other side are these like teepees, like actual teepees, and it's like a famous campsite. Like it was just so crazy. But
Okay, all right, I'm sold now.
yeah, but one of the random rules that they had, they were like, you can only drink like a certain type of beer. Like you have a tab, but you can only drink this one type of beer because they're like, yeah, we just had too many musicians come through and just clear us out essentially. And just like little things like that, where they're like, yeah, you can only
You can have
have like
PBR.
three drinks. Yeah, there's like no free, yeah, whatever it is. But what I was that was kind of long way around it. What I was going to say is like I had this show once where I emailed them. It was up in Oneonta, New York, and it was a winery. And I was making my way to Schenectady to feature for Mike Leibowitz. I know, right? Well, they're all named after they're all Native American names.
No, it's just the
So,
Leibowitz and the other one you said. Like it
oh, I'm
just,
just Schenectady, Mike Leibowitz in Schenectady. That was an interesting show.
yeah.
But the Proctor Theater was very cool. So if you're one of our Schenectady listeners, always go see a show at the Proctor Theater. But I emailed these guys and I was just like, hey, you know, it's a winery, right? And I'm just like, hey, like I'm doing comedy, blah blah. Blah. And there's enough guys somewhat local that you can put a run together and just fill it with them. And these guys like call me and were like we really need to like research you to make sure you're real. And I was like, what? So I sent him all my stuff, sent him YouTube, sent him everything. And so I finally get there on the day. It's like a family owned place, nicest people on the planet.
Yeah.
What had happened is there is a certain
Please tell me they
pretty
got
well,
catfished.
well, no, it was, um, there's someone that you and I both know who's a pretty nefarious booker. So that booker used to run a show at this winery and he told them, so he showed up on the day and he was like, why weren't you charging people since you opened? And they were like, well, we're a coffee shop in the morning. So he wanted them to charge people to enter their establishment before the show. And when they didn't, he like went ballistic on them. And so they had sent the email firing him. And 15 minutes later, I emailed them asking about the show. So they thought that I was him trying to like play a trick on them.
Like, okay, well, I'll just get an alias.
Yeah, how fun. And you
Wow.
know, yeah, and then the show was fantastic. So what would you say is your all-time worst show when you think of it?
Worst show, and it was all on me, and it was being young and new and not knowing when to say this doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
Is I was still living in Southern Pines, so I jumped at any chance I could get to do comedy. I went out on like a birthday party. It was like a boat hang with some friends. And of course it came up that it was like, oh, Drew's doing comedy now. Like, oh, okay, cool.
Please tell me
Hey,
you did comedy on a boat.
no, 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 no,
Oh, Drew,
no.
my dream.
Right. This would have been nice. But one of the guys on the boat was like, hey, man, my band is having their 5th anniversary show. Why don't you come open the show?
Interesting. And that was bad. You ended up having a bad time. Okay.
So I get there. They're already on stage.
Interesting.
So they take a quick break, and he's like, "Hey man, we're gonna keep playing for like 45 minutes, and then we'll bring you up." And I don't know, so I'm like, "Sounds great, dude." They play for another like hour and a half, and bring me up. And as soon as I pick a microphone up and say, "Oh hey guys,"
Yeah.
someone from the back of the room yells, "Shut up and put the music back on."
No.
Yeah. And I'm brand new. So this is my first like stick in the tire moment. Like, what do you do now? So I just did my material. I did 10 minutes in like 4 minutes. And handed the mic back to the lead singer and went to the bar and took a shot and then went home. And
Amazing.
I've never agreed to do comedy mixed in with music ever again.
See, and that's a good rule to have. And I know that that can happen, and it has happened to me as well. But most of my experiences with music have been good
But
somehow.
do you go first?
I've gone between, I've gone first.
But is it chill music? Like this was like a heavy metal band.
So that no, I have not done a heavy metal band. I did go attend a show that my friend was the guy playing music, and he was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, you should come by. There's comics going in between each band." And in theory, it worked because of the energy, and everyone knew the comics were there, but it just didn't work. Like I understood why they were doing it, but it didn't work out at
It
all. Like
usually
I was just
did.
watching the comics in the back, and I was like, I do not need to be the show.
No.
But I probably still would have said yes because unlike
It's
you,
what you
I don't.
do early on, man.
Well, no, I still do it now. That's probably my biggest problem is I don't say no enough to bad shows.
I mean, and I'm talking a big game. I don't say no to bad shows. But yeah,
See
it's ingrained in us, to say yes to when you get opportunities.
yeah, well, and until you get to a certain point when you can say no, right?
Well, that's
Otherwise,
the thing is you just want to get to a certain point where you can basically walk into any place and get time.
right.
Like I would love to be like, like a Ron White that can just walk into any club and be like, "You mind if I go up for like 10 minutes?" Like I would love that.
I love of all the people you could have thought of, you thought of Ron White.
Well, I just know he's notorious for doing that.
Oh, is he? Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
didn't know that. I
yeah.
didn't know that
He
information.
drops in like he randomly just will be in Denver and just pop in and be like, "Hey."
Ron
I know I
White's
used
here.
to do it to Atlanta all the time when he'd come back to Atlanta.
Where's he based out of?
I think he started. I think Atlanta. I think that's where
Yeah,
his
that
area.
makes sense. I figured somewhere in the South.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, what
I
about
think
you? Top number
yeah.
one overall worst show.
I will not say the name of the bar,
That's smart.
but I will say
Say the state.
that it was in North Carolina.
Okay.
So this is the reason it was so bad is that day I woke up in Hagerstown, Maryland. I was at my parents' place, and I was headlining at this place on a Thursday. It was a one-off show. They usually have shows on a different day of the week. I wake up that day, go for a run, and I did my first. It was the first time I ran 3 miles in under 21 minutes, which was a personal goal of mine. I have not done it since, nor do I think I ever will again.
Knocking out the 7 minute miles. All right.
7 minute
I
miles
ran one 7 minute mile one time. And that's because we
last week.
absolutely had to for baseball to
Oh,
make
for
the
baseball. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Yeah. I remember those
I
days.
was a catcher in the third base. I was like, why do I have to run 7 minute miles? This is stupid.
Yeah. I mean, we had to run 2 miles in under like 14 minutes in high school for soccer. And I remember like now I'm like, that's still pretty hard. But anyways, so I'm thinking we're about to have a great night.
Yeah.
Then I drive 5 straight hours to this place, like white knuckling it because I'm a little late, and walk in, and the producer it was her first time producing a show, which should have been my first red flag. There's jazz playing. The jazz is going to wrap up, and then we're taking over for the show. So there is a crowd there expecting to see some jazz. So they're a little bit older.
Light jazz.
Yeah, and they don't all know about the club. They don't all know about the comedy. So first comic goes up. I think it was the producer. She hosted just fine. Like, doesn't do anything bad, but just fine. First comic bombs, second comic bombs. The feature did great. And I'm thinking, okay, cool. Like, this is gonna be fine. And I get on stage and there's this group to my right of like 13 middle-aged women, and they are just screaming at each other. Just talking.
And they didn't
so
do this
loud.
for the other comics?
Didn't do it for the other comics, just for me. So I acknowledge it once, acknowledge it twice. Like, someone goes over from the audience, asks them to be quiet. The producer asks them to be quiet. Everyone's asking to be quiet. And then, like, I'm in the middle of a joke and they're so loud, I see the entire audience just look over at them because they can't hear what I'm saying. And I have a microphone and a speaker and all this stuff. And I finally turn and I go, Jesus, will you shut the fuck up? It's like, gee, what's wrong with you? And they were like, well, maybe if you were funny. And that gets you so good, right? They're like, well, maybe if you were funny. And I'm like, how do you know if I'm funny? No one can fucking hear anything but you do. Like, all you guys fucking talking, blah, blah. Go nuts. Fucking lose it. Finish up my set. Oh, the lights come on, which, like, the lights come on, right? Because they had like
when
a
you're still
bit
on
of a
stage?
spotlight. Yeah. And so the lights come on, and I just thought someone leaned against it. And so I like look at, look at someone. I was like, did you do that? And they were like, no. I was like, did you guys do that? And they were like, no. And I was like, well, that's the first time you've been quiet, so I'm going to finish my set. That's what happened. I remember. I was like, did you guys do that? And they were like, no. And I'm like, well, that's the first time they got quiet. Finish my set. Like, the people that are listening are like kind of laughing, but it's also just like the whole show's ruined.
Done.
So there's another comic there who's local. He grabs me immediately. Like, as soon as I was like, all right, I was like, everyone have a great night. I hope you guys all like die in a fiery crash.
Did you
He
say
grabs
that?
me. He's like, hey, I said something like that. Like, I don't think I said fiery crash, but I said like, I hope you all get food poisoning or something like that. So, so the guy grabs me, and up to that point, me and the bartender have been very friendly, and I knew he was also the owner. And so the guy grabs me. He's like, "Hey man, there's no way you could have known this, but the woman you were yelling at, or one of the women you were yelling at, is the owner's wife, and she's also the co-owner." And the first thing I said was, "Then why would they act like that?
Right.
Like, why would they act like that? Like, it's
You're ruining
insane."
your own show.
Yeah. And he was like, I'm just letting you know. And he was like, and truthfully, I thought you handled it as well as you could. And I just like, he's like, I'm just being honest. He's like, I think they're in the wrong, but I'm letting you know what you're about to walk into. I'm like, thank you. Walk back to the bar, go up to the bartender and I said, hey, I didn't know that was your wife and I'm sorry. And I was like, I'm sorry, expecting him to apologize back. Like, you know how you like say sorry just to get an apology back?
Right.
Because I'm like, there's no way he thinks that was appropriate. Like
Right.
And he's like, what the fuck's your problem, man? And I was like, excuse me? And he's like, do you think you can just come down here from New York and talk to people like that? And I was like, what? I was like, dude, they were ruining the entire show. And he goes, those are paying customers. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, those are paying customers. Like, it was the craziest conversation I've ever had, right? And I just went, well, I've already apologized, and I'm not apologizing a second time. You got me? And he was like, yeah, I got you. And I was like, what's my tab? He's like, the tab's on me. And I'm like, cool. So I put down 20 just to be a dick, which is a weird thing because I made, oh my God, I'll get to that point. So I like put down 20, whatever. Then I stand there at the bar to make a point, just to like stand there and be like, I'm not leaving. Like, I'm not backing down to this. And then every audience member comes up to me one by one and apologizes in front of them and goes, I am so sorry they treated you that way. That is not how we act down here. Then another woman walks up. She's like, I asked them to be quiet 3 times. That was just so ridiculous. So now he's hearing this, and I see him kind of being like, oh, maybe I was wrong. Like, maybe my drunk wife should have shut up, you know? So like this lady's talking to me, and she's being very nice, and she's just like, I'm so sorry. Like, please come back. Like, we thought you were funny, but we just couldn't hear you, and blah 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 blah. And then to finally top it off, the producer comes up and she hands me like $40. And I was like, we only made $40 in the tip bucket. She goes, well, I had to split it evenly between everybody. So instead of giving the headline a little more money, she split. So everyone made $40 in the show. And I just went to the bar next door and just sat down and I had a shot and a beer. And I texted my buddy I was staying with. I was like, are you up? And he's like, yeah. I was like, you are not even gonna believe what just happened. Go to my friend's place. And the next 2 shows, I am just shitting on his venue, shitting all over this guy. I find out this guy's got a bad reputation with most comedians in the scene. Cause yeah, like, and I'm not going to tell you what he did because I don't give the whole goddamn thing away. But like it was sort of like, yes, this show was so bad, but I made a ton of friends from it because of it. And I got like my kind of like, I felt, what's the word?
Vindicated.
Justified. Yeah, vindicated. Because everyone was like, yeah, that guy sucks. Like, of course he did that. Blah, blah. So I think the final piece of the story is cut to 2020. And, we're all just bored and angry and we're sitting around and blah blah. And at that time, Trump had made a comment about giving, like, it was like, I think they were debating about giving people like $300 a week or something. Like, it was something about like another stimulus package or something was happening with that.
Yeah.
And I just made the joke, like something like Trump thinking people will get back to work thinking people won't go back to work for $300. Clearly has never driven 5 hours to blah 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 North Carolina to get to have to yell at a bartender to tell his drunk wife to shut the fuck up. And I tagged the bar in it, and like a couple of North Carolina guys are DMing me just like, oh my god, I heard about that shit. Like, whatever. And so that's up on my profile for like months. And because they were tagged in it, but they don't follow me, I was like in their like requests or something. So then the guy finds it, he messages me, and he was like, "You son of a bitch!" He's like, he's so mad. He's like, "You have no class, blah blah." He's like, "You tagged our place, blah blah." I just blocked him. So that would be the
You
Irish
say you
not
won't
letting shit
go back there, huh?
Easy to say. Won't be performing on a certain night a week on the show that they run every week that apparently is very good.
I have done it and it was fun.
Yeah, I bet you did, and I bet the bartender loved you, / owner. But he thought you were fantastic.
I don't think I had any interaction with him whatsoever, so I'm glad now.
Probably thought you.
Man, I'll go into a place and do the show and then just do.
Yeah, you're. This is why we need to keep doing shows together, because it will. We're gonna sit down.
Don't throw that.
Go find some bros to hang out with.
Yeah. Don't some bros owe you a shot? Come on. Yeah. Well, that was great, man. I had fun talking about that. It's nice to think about it now that you're not in the moment of doing the bad shows.
It feels like therapy. Where you're just
like this one time. What you got? What you got coming up?
Let's see. I got. We are doing a show at. Oh, this. Speaking of bad shows, I am setting myself up. We are doing a show at the Cobra in Nashville in the front room at 8:00 on Saturday, April 1st, April Fool's Day. We're doing a show. We got a great lineup.
Is this their way of doing April Fools on their regulars?
I don't know why we're doing this. But I booked a certain lineup that I know can handle it.
I hope you go up and you're like, we're doing a comedy show, and then every bartender just is like, April Fools.
Yeah. Oh my god. I would be relieved, but they're not. Yeah. So I got that coming up, and then I'm hitting the road again. I'm going to be doing. I don't know if you can tell, but it's such a weird thing. But I'm doing Don't Tell in Columbus. I'll be around like the Indianapolis, Cincinnati area a lot in April.
It's fantastic. I had a great time meeting a lot of the indie comedy scene last night at the Sunday
very
show.
Fun scene.
Definitely check out
a lot of great comics come out of indie. Yeah, Sunday show at Black Circle. I'll be there.
Everyone was. It was other outside of me. It was an indie lineup, and they were fantastic. They were so fun.
Yeah, it's such a good scene. It's so funny, and like just a ton of people come out of there. A ton of people like to travel there. And let's see, I'll also be. Well, I'll get to that. We'll talk about it another time. But yeah, I'll be around. I'm back around. I'm out and about again. Nice, what about you? What do you got coming up?
I've got a run in North Carolina coming up. I'll be at the Why Not Bar when this comes out, Wednesday the 29th. I'll be featuring for N. Edwards at Dead Crow Friday and Saturday, March 31st, April 1st. And then I'll be at Dreamers Restaurant in Monk's Corner, South Carolina, Monday, April 3rd.
Oh, I'm jealous. That show's so good.
Yeah, dude. And then, of course, please check out Stone Cold Sober, our show. We run every month at Third Coast Comedy Club. Next installment, April 7th, 9 o'clock.
I'm running that by myself.
Yeah.
Oh my god! I think
I will be at the Comedy Catch in Chattanooga that weekend if you're also in that area.
Yeah, come by Stone Cold Sober and watch. I'm gonna have so much fun.
Oh no,
No one's gonna be able to control me.
Me and Jasper away. Will play.
Woo! That's gonna be a good one.
Oh boy, at least we got a funny lineup. So hey,
it's a good lineup.
Yeah. But more importantly, check out Project Nerd. We're so happy to be a part of the Project Nerd family. Check them out. Check out all their great content. Subscribe to their channel. Subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. Check out my new top 5. This week I did TGIF shows. You remember TGIF on Friday nights?
Yeah, I saw your thing. I saw that. I was like, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So check it out. Hit that subscribe button. We will see you next time.
Did Project Nerd make that?